No, we can get going.
Okay.
He's away from the office and shouldn't be on this call in the first place.
Well, we can start out with a roll call so we make sure we have a quorum.
Okay.
Can we unmute Doug, Garrison, and Guy?
Yeah, I think they can unmute themselves.
There we go.
Okay, how do we do the unmute?
Yeah.
It
I
should
can
be
ask
down
Guy
in
to unmute.
the lower
Guy
left.
is still muted. There, no, still is.
Yes.
I can unmute him.
Okay, very good.
Oh,
And
good.
Jerry's muted. Okay.
Jeez. Jerry's muted, so I'll unmute him.
Yes.
Okay. So we have Kathleen, you're here. And I'm just going through members, I think now. And Garrison.
Send him the invite. Okay, hold on. I need to send an invite to Rick.
Online?
No, I have him right here. I can call him up.
Okay.
Just a second, folks. So I think I just go to invitation.
Hi, Dave Cresson.
Dave is muted.
And then it's
Let's not use this
Rick.
because. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
All
We're
right.
waiting for Rick.
Yeah.
So he just got the he's logging in now.
I believe
Ray?
Dave will need to unmute.
Yes, sir.
Ray,
Yes.
can you unshare for a moment so we then get the whole grid? Easier to do sort of the roll call with everybody seeing who is here. Great. Then we can see everybody. And then we'll start it with the share. How about that?
Wonderful.
Okay, thanks.
Good idea.
Okay, I'll start with roll call. Committee member Brown.
Present.
Member Crescent. He's present.
Present.
Committee member Hernandez. He's logging in. I'll come back to him. Committee member Martin.
Here.
Committee member Nelson.
Here.
Committee member Rabbit.
Yes, I'm here.
Committee member Sigali.
Here,
Committee Steinberg.
Ooh,
Steinberg.
that's me, I'm here.
Chair Douglas.
Right here. Yes.
And Vice Chair Hyman is excused. And I think that was, that's
Rick.
Rick. Oh, yep, that's Rick. Rick, you're here, right? I'll do. Okay, he's here because I see his name.
He's here.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to let John take it away.
Me, I'm just sitting here like everybody else.
Oh, actually, on the
Anyway, I wanted to thank you all for making time for this. We've, I think, got some good information tonight. We haven't been seen you in a while, so thank you all again for being willing to show up tonight. This process, the Zoom meetings are amazing in terms of just the sheer technology and what we're able to achieve from distant places. But nothing replaces still that in-person feel of the meetings, but we'll do the best we can. I think for me, there are a couple of, particularly Mr. Nelson. I don't think I was involved in the last meeting. I think you were a new addition to the group that I apologize I haven't met before. From the prior, I didn't participate in the last Bridge Advisory Committee meeting. So welcome aboard, and the rest of you, thanks again for holding on. I'm gonna just basically pass the torch to Ray and let him run with this and go from there.
John, I have Mabash is here and also Anthony Richardson. So
Yes, Mawash Harms and Anthony Richardsons are from Biggs Cardoso and Associate. Those are our structural design engineers.
Ignore the name on the picture.
Yep, there she is.
The one order of business that we do have is election of officers. And we may want to, that's on our agenda. I think, Ray, before you start into your presentation, does that make sense?
Yes, let me just share the content of the agenda. Welcome and roll call. And then election of chair and vice chair.
Yep.
So previously we had Brian as the chair and Steve as the vice chair. Steve is on vacation, so he won't be present today. So we need to nominate a new chair and a vice chair.
Or
So-
if I could say this, this is not this is not the most critical thing that we do and deal with it at this point. It has been discussed and suggested that perhaps we push this off to allow the vice chair to participate in the next meeting, and we can kind of move that forward. We can continue if Mr. Douglas is willing to, as your chair, to continue on until we can do that formally. Again, it's not a critical juncture point tonight that we have to do this, so we would leave that to your committee to decide how you wish to proceed on chair and vice chair selection tonight. And I'll turn it over.
I'll add that it's the easiest chair job I've ever had, serving on boards and commissions, because I think I had one meeting as chair. And of course, we could always get even with the vice chair who didn't make this meeting by electing him chair in his absence. But I'd be happy to carry on till the next regular meeting. Hopefully, because of 2020, when we meet the next time, we can actually do it in person, and this crazy year will be behind it.
So moved.
Basically, there's no reason why we can't keep the same, Brian really didn't have a chance to do something as a chair. So my recommendation is to maintain the chair and vice chair for another year, just to keep continuity. But this is a suggestion.
Well,
I agree.
if I may, I think we need to ask Steve if he wants to do it again. So
Okay,
why don't we put it off to the next meeting?
no problem.
Okay, so election of chair and vice chair move to the following meeting. Next item on the agenda, approval of meeting notes from June 27, 2019. And you all received a copy of the meeting notes. Just to recap what we did at the last meeting. The major items that were discussed were the design status, where John discussed the dilemma we were in with FHWA and the requirement for the new MASH for the barriers, the alternatives that we discussed. There were certain alternatives that we wanted to go ahead with to replace the concrete barrier and the sidewalk barrier. And the committee decided to recommend that we go with the staff recommended FHWA approved barriers for the vehicles and the steel barriers that are horizontal for the pedestrian with the white paint to match the existing. And we took this following the meeting, we took this to the council meeting in July. And then we discussed the schedule as well. That's the recap of the meeting notes.
If we need approval, I'd move that the meeting notes be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Very good. So meeting notes from June 27th, 2019 has been approved. We open it to public comments. Any member of the public present and would like to comment?
So we have one call-in attendee. I can't tell who it is. It's just a phone number. I'm going to ask them if they need to talk. Here you go. Hello, call-in 650-204. Did you have any questions in the public?
No.
Okay, that's no. Thank you. Here you go.
Very good. So we close the public comments. We move on to project background and status. And we have Anthony Richardson from the firm of Biggs Cardoso Associate and Mavish Harms. But before that, just wanted to go over the city council meeting on June 16, 2019. We took the recommendation of the advisory committee, and the council members took a motion to accept the recommendation of the committee for the Bay Area design. So that motion was carried 4-0 with one absent. So we start with the rehab status, and Anthony and Mavish.
Thanks, Ray. Yeah, so there's a summary on the slide there of our progress to date. We've done a lot of the initial studies and surveys and information gathering. So that includes the actual physical survey, the topographical survey of the ground conditions, the existing sidewalks and buildings and so on. We've also completed the geotechnical investigation where geotechnical engineer drilled some exploratory shafts, I think about 70 feet deep, and took various samples, and they've logged that information and done various tests on the samples. I'm not quite going to follow this sequence. If we skip down a little, hydraulics and hydrology analysis. This is a study of in an extreme storm. So this is the heaviest storm in 100 years. We've looked at the amount of water that's flowing down the channel and analyze the stability of the banks and the creek itself. And as part of that, we've designed some strengthening to some areas of the creek that would be required. Let's see, so that's a lot of the initial work. As far as the actual bridge design, we've completed our seismic evaluation and assessment of the existing structure. And we've also designed the seismic retrofit, which essentially consists of a concrete cover slab over the existing arch and some localized foundation strengthening to the existing structure. At the actual roadway level, we've completed the preliminary design of some the roadway itself will be a very similar alignment to the existing alignment. At the north end of the bridge, the bend in the road is a little tight, so we're adjusting one curb line on the north side of on that bend just to the north of the bridge. On the profile, the roadway is very flat through the bridge, so we're adding a slight rise on the center of the bridge, about 9 inches, to assist in draining the bridge better during heavy rains. And we've also designed the alignment of the sidewalks, and we'll see those in the images that we show later. But essentially, to meet current code requirements for accessibility and some safety requirements for barriers, we have to widen the existing sidewalks a little. And so we've designed the layout of those and how they tie into the existing sidewalks. There's one new feature we've added is a crosswalk at the south end of the bridge. And then we've also designed the new safety barriers. And there was a lot of discussion about that at the last advisory committee meeting. Since we started this project, there's been new code requirements that FHWA have introduced, which apply to this project, which means we have to use a new barrier that has been approved through crash testing and then approved by Caltrans. And so we have.
Can we go to that slide? I think we have that slide.
Yes, we have some slides that shows the visual simulations, and we are very happy to share that with you. If you would like, we can just proceed to the visual simulations now, if that helps. Anthony?
Yeah, I guess just one more point, and then I think we've sort of covered the progress. From the next big step that we have to go through, we're sort of just wrapping up the documentation of that preliminary design. Now that we have that design, the next step is to complete all of the environmental studies that we have to do as part of the federal NEPA environmental process and the California CEQA process. And so we're just starting those studies where we have, for example, a biologist and an archaeologist doing field surveys in the areas that will be affected by the project.
A quick question on the preliminary. What's the significance of preliminary? What's the next step after that? Why can it be a complete design?
Well, because this is a federally funded project, there are sort of mandated steps that we follow. And so the preliminary design is the first step. At this stage, we fully define like the scope of the project. We define the sort of the dimensions of the bridge, and we do analysis to show that, say, the width of the bridge, the length of the bridge, the thickness of it is adequate. And so we fully design like that shape. Once we have that information, then the next stage we go through is the environmental approval. And then as we're going through that approval stage, we can do the next design stage where we're doing some of the detailed design, like the actual reinforcement bars. We've done enough design at this point to know that we can design reinforcement and it's a reasonable layout. But it's the next stage where we really flesh out, exactly how big the bars are and what the spacing is, and that sort of level of detail. But the design we have is, it's fully dimensioned at this point. And so that's the difference between the preliminary stage and the final design stage for the federal process.
Now, one thing I wanted to add in was this has been a very difficult year in terms of our design team meeting with Caltrans, especially the architectural historian, to make sure that design alternatives that we discuss and we pursue is something that does not affect the historic integrity of the bridge. And it has been a complex process. We had multiple meetings, field meetings, in-person meetings. Caltrans came, architectural historians, local assistants, and we were trying to figure out exactly what can be done with the design so that it's still the Caltrans would consider this no impact to the architectural history of this bridge. The arch, for example, is very important. Obviously, that's the main item for the bridge. How do you actually reinforce the arch without impacting the historic nature of the bridge? We looked at different alternatives. Eventually, we came out with the alternative that Anthony is explaining, the slab over the bridge that would be, is that a post-tension slab, Anthony? You want to explain?
It is.
So go ahead.
Yeah,
Anthony,
and
I had
so,
a question on, you mentioned about the seismic design. Are you still planning to put piles at the ends of the bridge, or is this slab that's sitting on top going to be the seismic design?
Yeah, so we are still proposing to put in piles at the corners of the existing bridge, and then another set of piles set further back that will provide additional support to the new portion of cover slab. And the piles that are reinforcing the existing foundation, you can actually see them on one of the visualizations, and so you'll see what sort of impact that has.
Yeah.
Thank
Also
you.
wanted to mention the sidewalks. Currently, the sidewalks are attached to the bridge. However, they're putting additional weight on the bridge, and one of the features of the design is since the sidewalks are not historic, we will remove those sidewalks and create its own concrete bridge adjacent to the existing bridge, but no load affecting whether seismic, vertical, or horizontal on the bridge itself. So you will see that as part of the visualization, and Anthony could explain more about that if you have any questions.
So the sidewalks are not attached to the bridge at all, even for horizontal load.
That's right. They're actually part of this cover slab, and so they're not attached to the original arch structure.
Okay, but they're attached to for lateral loads, for horizontal load, they're attached essentially to the slab. They're tied into it, which then is, the slab is tied into the bridge. So realistically, the bridge is getting some kind of lateral load.
Actually, that's sort of different with the slab. Anthony, can you explain how the slab is supported?
Yeah. So I know you're interested more in lateral loads.
Yeah,
sounds like
right. That's been the big question about the seismic capability of the bridge.
Yeah, and so the new cover slab is slightly the way we're installing it. We're going to saw cut off the existing concrete barriers to reduce the height of the existing walls, and then the new cover slab will be slightly above the level of that concrete, and will wrap around on the outside edges, so it sort of hangs down slightly below the existing concrete walls. And so in that way, as the existing bridge tries to move laterally, it will actually engage sort of jam against the cover slab, and that cover slab will restrain the arch from moving.
Right, so the cover slab is not a detriment to the existing arch, but actually helping the arch in terms of lateral seismic movement.
Okay. So
because the cover slab has its own piles and connected at the end.
Okay, understand. Thank you.
Ray or Anthony, my understanding and from a different perspective on the cover slab is that those would be prefabricated and brought, if this moves forward in this way, would be prefabricated, be able to be brought to the site, and would reduce the amount of disruption of traffic over the bridge when we're doing kind of major construction. Could you just confirm that?
So actually, John, that was an earlier concept, but as we were going through the preliminary design process, we found that wasn't quite feasible to precast the concrete.
Okay.
So, it's partly because what we're doing is keeping one lane of traffic, the southbound lane of traffic will remain open at all times, and that one traffic lane for different stages of construction will be moved slightly from side to side. So we'll move it, for example, we move that traffic lane to the east side of the existing bridge while we build the west side of the new bridge. And then once that portion is built, we'll move the temporary traffic lane onto that portion of new bridge, and then we can build the east side of the new bridge.
Perfect.
And what?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for. Sorry.
Okay. And I was going to say that sort of precasting it didn't quite work dimensionally. Trying to build portions of it first, it just didn't work out with some dimensions. But the
main issue, I thank you for that. You guys have been moving this along. And but the main issue I wanted to make sure that the committee understood, because this was one of the major challenges and one of the major calls for action from the downtown community, and particularly the downtown business owners, but the folks going to school to and from Cunha and around, was that we continue, everything that we're looking at continues to assume and plan around one lane open at all times, and shifting of that lane, but keeping downtown connected to Highway 92 and Highway 92 connected to downtown. So I thank you for clarifying the technical part of that, but the functional piece to that was what I was really focused on for this group. We're going to keep it open and running throughout construction, and there may be, as we've said in the past, a few times in which we have to shut it down for a very short period of time to complete something, but the vast majority of the time, 95 to 99% of the time, will be through traffic able to go through.
John, will that be true for the people that are walking on the walkways also, or?
Yes, there will be a pedestrian sidewalk area at all times as well. So there'll be one temporary sidewalk and a traffic barrier, and then a traffic lane at all times.
Can somebody tell me, see that this process is going to last for 1.5 years on the timeline. So how much of that 1.5 years is going to have just one lane traffic into Half Moon Bay?
We're still developing a conceptual construction schedule of how long each stage would take. So I don't have an answer at the moment.
Yeah, we're going to phase the project. We try to open up traffic as soon as possible, but most of that 1.5 years, we would have one lane traffic.
That's pretty disappointing to the downtown business,
Yeah, I mean, compared to the original option to kind of close the bridge down completely, this is the best scenario.
Well, the close it down completely would have been unthinkable and caused the rioting and the rioting of the one-way streets.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Are you going to then provide other ways to get downtown besides the bridge, or is it?
Yeah, the traffic flow would be coming to downtown. So coming to downtown from Highway 92, the direction heading south would be open at all times. Going back to Highway 92, you would have to go down Kelly and Highway 1 and then back to 92.
Would we have additional signage for people to know where to come and go?
Absolutely. There will be, we already have looked at the traffic circulation, and we're proposing some signage. We just reviewed that actually this morning, and we will make sure that adequate signage are in place well in advance of the bridge, and people would know through communication through the web, as well as flyers to the businesses.
Does this committee, is this committee allowed to look over that signage before it's, signed, sealed, and delivered?
Absolutely. That would be one of the things we'll bring to you. We could even schedule it for next time, because we already looked at the signage, and we are taking the approach as the more the better, so people would understand exactly where to go. So we're discussing it now. The signage will be available in about a month, and we could share that with you at the next meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Ray, one of the things you mentioned was that there's going to be a crosswalk, which there isn't right now.
Let's move on to the next piece, and I think we can. I think a lot of this will feel a lot better going through the visual side of it. You can see something on your screen, and then perhaps some of the questions get answered. I would just suggest we go there, and then we can kind of let's take the questions after we go through this piece, because I think a lot of questions will be answered out of this. That's all right, Jerry?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the crosswalk right now. I don't understand. Doesn't the highway department require, or I guess it's a city street, to have some kind of warning lights before it or after it? the crosswalks always are a hassle.
So this is the aerial view. You're looking a little bit to from the south to north towards the shopping center where the coffee company is on the north side. You will see kind of a slight view of what the bridge is going to look like. You will see the south side. We have added a crossing and the conforming sidewalks coming on both directions. Let me move to the next one here. This is the existing on the left and the visual simulation on the right. You will see, let me just get my pen here. See if I could use this here. So what you see on the left side is this barrier is going to come out, is no longer required. Instead, what we have is a new barrier with a crash cushion at the end. What you see on the sidewalk is also a MASH approved FHWA barrier that's steel and that's painted white. The barrier between the pedestrians and the vehicles is concrete. It's also painted white. As you can see, the bollards at the end of the barrier has been removed because FHWA no longer allows any vertical intrusions unless they're set back 16 inches from the barrier. So it was not acceptable to them to put the bollards at the end. Instead, we do have those crash cushions, as you can see here, with the orange markers to make sure that nobody puts a head-on collision, has a head-on collision with the barrier itself. The sidewalks, what you see there is concrete that's stamped to look like the existing kind of wood color, the existing sidewalk we have there currently. This sidewalk, as we explained, is no longer attached to the bridge, but attached to the deck and supported at both ends with new foundation. So there's no load on the bridge as far as the arch is concerned. We have the crossing at this end, which is the south end. And if you saw the previous one, you will see how the crossing comes into contact with the sidewalks at both ends. And it's actually a very pleasant transition from the existing sidewalk going into the bridge sidewalk with some areas that the restaurants, for example, you can use for outdoor seating. Let me go back.
Pardon me, Ray.
Yes.
On the crosswalk, and John had mentioned a few meetings ago, the old Pasta Moon, whoever owns that property now, there was going to be one parking space that was going to be taken, and there had to be a move to do that. Has that been done? Or?
The parking space, we will be using that parking space to widen that area and create that crosswalk, correct. Currently, we have posted signs that it's no parking except for loading and unloading. But eventually one of the parking spots will come out and be included as part of the sidewalk and the crosswalk here. This one is looking to the north and you can see where the crosswalk is. And Pasta Moon, it's the old Pasta Moon. Now it has a new name, I believe. I just looked at their menu recently and it's another Italian restaurant. I just can't recall the name. But they'll be opening up soon.
About the north end?
The north end? Yes.
We have a pretty significant curve there. And I think currently you might be able to see it in that image. There's those, I don't know what they're called, apologies, but those bumps in the middle there to kind of allow you to feel if you're veering off into the other lane. Are those going to be kind of on that tight curve for the new bridge as well?
We actually have adjusted that tight curve. We've made it a little less tight by using by changing that curve. The curve that you see, let me just see. This curve has been adjusted here. So this curve is going to come out like this more, and this line would get adjusted so you would have a better transition. So you won't have to do a sharp turn to go on the bridge.
Okay.
and less prone to accidents. And then we've created actually a green area on the right side here, and that would be planted with short shrubbery.
Is there a reason why there wouldn't be box dots on the ground though?
No, there will be,
What's the
but
harm?
yeah, there would be, but what I was saying was the curve has been adjusted, so we won't have a sharp turn getting onto the
Just
bridge.
you know,
You're
I'm
saying
over at Garden.
Good.
Sorry, go ahead.
I understand that, Ray, but this is still a very narrow bridge and big trucks come across it. I think box dots would be an absolute must.
Yes.
The visualization just isn't showing it. We'll correct the visualization. It will have the bot dots on there. So it's
Great.
Okay. Thanks, John.
yeah.
Got a butt in.
Thank you.
Hey, Rick has raised his hand, but I'm having trouble getting his. Oh, there he goes. He has something to say.
Hey guys, wow, fantastic project, very exciting. When I look at this, I have a procedural question, and then I have a physical observation project or observation, which I think is consistent with some of the other things that are coming in. The first one is, I'm hearing, as a planning commissioner, I'm hearing a lot of things that talk about process and timing. And we're going to go through this process with the state, but I'm wondering, what is the process for architectural review, for planning commission review, from a design perspective? Because if we come up with something we like, and then what's the process for getting this in front of the planning commission and architectural review committees in the city? That's my first question. I'll pause and take that, and then I have a second question.
Okay. Doug Garrison, he's our planning contact. So Doug, would you be able to respond?
Sure, Rick. Well, we'll, like most everything, require a coastal development permit. So you'll be seeing that along with all the environmental review, just like on most major projects that go through the Planning Commission. This one's, it's a bit more complicated just because of the number of different agencies, different departments within Caltrans involved. And so it's been a bit of a moving target trying to meet the engineering safety standards, the historical resource standards, and just get the project pinned down enough where we can actually have a stable project description and get the ball rolling on those other components of the permitting.
Okay, great. I would hate to have this come. I don't see anything that I would see objectionable from an architectural review perspective. I can't speak for the 4 other members of the Planning Commission, but I would just say that it'd be great to get something in front of the Planning Commission in the near term, just so that we don't have to worry about rewriting things after we've gone through a long and lengthy and extensive engineering process. The one thing I'll observe is there's one architecturally significant aspect to this bridge, which is the little beacon or end point or whatever you want to call it near the light post. And there's really nothing interesting about the new bridge. It looks safe, it looks clean. And when I look at this bridge, I wonder, from an architectural perspective, is there a way for us to add that adornment back in, just so it looks more consistent with what we had before? And then the second question is, can somebody comment just on the safety standards? I understand that the bridge is getting widened a little bit from the entry point, but from a pedestrian safety perspective, I'm always concerned about cars riding up onto the sidewalk and hitting pedestrians. Is there something we can do to create a little bit more of a railing or protection or curb or whatever it is we need to do on the curb, in between the curb and the sidewalk, to protect the humans? Those are the only questions I have.
I'll take the very general approach to this, and then I'll let the experts jump in more. This was the subject of extensive conversation over the last 8 months or so, were the bollards, or whatever you want to call them, at the ends. And the issue, I think, was mentioned by Ray and probably by Anthony as well, is we just can't make those work. And because they have to be offset at least 16 inches off of the curb line, which would put you right in the middle of the walkways on each of those to even consider putting them, and then it looks ridiculous.
Great, got it.
Yeah. The other thing for your comfort level, we brought forward, and I think there's some pictures at the beginning of the presentation that show actually the beginnings of this bridge when it was initially constructed. It looks more like actually the new bridge. The additional architectural adornments were added at a later point, and so that's been the challenge that we've been looking at, is sort of reaching back to the very beginning. You can see here's a good picture of that. So, and this was with, obviously, the one to the right is the easiest one to look at. These were with no walkways, of course, but this was the original bridge with very much a straight line there. And I think we figured out somewhere in the 30s or so, I believe, was the timing for those additional architectural additions to this. But that's been the challenge.
That looks great. It's a beautiful project. You've answered my questions. Thank you.
Yeah. We're happy to go offline at any time and talk a little more about it if you wish to.
I'm good. We've ticked that box. The only question I do have is just I understand we have safety standards. We have engineers who've looked at things. I've, like Jerry and some other people who are in this process, we've all seen things that Caltrans and city engineers have put in place from a pedestrian safety perspective that aren't always tip top. And so the question I have is more about pedestrian safety and, cars running over the sidewalk. What are we doing to make sure that pedestrians are tip top after Pumpkin Festival, when some of the rowdies are leaving town, they've had a little too much to drink? How do we handle those situations to protect our pedestrians?
Well, I'll again jump into this in the very basic sense. The new standards that we're challenged with in terms of the historic nature of this are all designed around protecting the pedestrians and ultimately protecting the motorist as well. And I mean, ultimately, this is a slow speed bridge and needs to continue to be, a 25 mile per hour area. And which is what's led us to some of our challenges with design standards that are looking at 45 mile per hour straight on hits by an SUV. It just, it doesn't match well with this. But I think the work that's been done here does what you're asking. The widening of the walkway itself pulls people away from the curb line, and that's a positive. Certainly, we have the barriers that are required, the concrete barrier that's on the bridge itself. We've also obviously meeting ADA, so anyone who is from a more challenged accessibility will not have some of the challenges that they have today, and I think that's a safety factor on this. From the bicycle side, that's the biggest challenge here, and it really is an issue. And I could see in the final designs of this, there be the Charos being painted on the road, and some additional signage perhaps added about bicycle safety, and what we're going to basically be directing bicyclists is to take the entire lane, whichever direction they're going, and don't try to be pushed over to the side and dealing with that. So I think there's some basic issues that we're looking at here. And clearly there was a question about the crosswalk. this has been designed around sort of being a speed table kind of at a very minimal, but being laddered and elevated just slightly to try to give that sense of something there. Because of the historic nature of the bridge, I think we would all
It's on the
really try
crosswalk.
to stay away from the flashing beacons and the stuff that goes along with that. And in part because I think it draws your attention in many ways away from what you're really looking at sometimes and dealing with that. I think they're great in certain points. I'll leave it to the engineers to talk about it, and for Moz or Anthony to add anything that I didn't hit.
I think one of the other things, thank you, John. Yeah, as you mentioned, that crosswalk is very important. As you can see, we've added these street lights at the crosswalk to get additional illumination. Also we have increased the height of the railing to the current 42 inches from the to the new 42 inches from the current 36-inch. That gives us additional protection for the pedestrians. And as you can see on the right side where Postamone used to be, there used to be a 290-degree angle for the sidewalk to kind of turn twice coming off from the bridge in this area here. And those two angles have been removed. That's better for pedestrians, ADA, people on wheelchair, etc. And it provides a better flow. Those are the things that we thought would be important. Another thing that John mentioned was the surface of the sidewalk currently is very bumpy. We constantly get complaints about people, whether they're on wheelchair or walking, that those bumps with some bolts or screws sticking out is very uncomfortable, and those are going to go away. We still have stamps that look like old, but it'd be very smooth. It would be smooth concrete and much easier to traverse for pedestrians.
Is security camera applicable here, or are we contemplating putting security camera, or it doesn't fit here? Ray?
Yes, security cameras.
Yeah.
That is I'll jump there. We have not contemplated security cameras. We've had a conversation about license plate readers and a lot of issues. I'm not sure what we're trying to achieve with that guy. Can you explain what you're trying, what you would see achieving with the security camera?
Basically, you have a multiple. You have the car, we have the bicycle, you have the pedestrian. There could be an area of concern here. So if you have, I don't know, a security camera, it could be helpful to sort these issues.
I'm certainly happy to talk a little more about it, particularly I think offline. But frankly, I'm not making a connection between that with that. I mean, at any time we could put.
We can take it offline, John. No problem.
Yeah, we could put a security camera up at any time. It's not part of this, and I think I will say this community, we have to be very, in this community and many others, there's grave concern about personal
I understand.
privacy.
I understand.
John, I got to tell you, in San Mateo by the police station, when you make a turn, if you don't come to a fully stop, you get a ticket. It cost me $400. So the cameras, I'm not big on the cameras myself, but I think you need to somehow put some kind of warning before you get to this sidewalk from either direction. It's too vulnerable right now.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a camera, like Jerry's saying, maybe some warning, some mechanism to alert the people not to speed or pedestrian.
Sure.
Especially the delivery drivers, the big, semi trucks that come over multiple times a day, at least 5 to 6 days a week for the restaurants, and especially for feed and fuel. I'm obviously at Garden Apothecary, so I see it firsthand because they park in front of my shop. And, they also push the weight limit often.
There remember, there is no weight limit on this bridge. The weight has never been an issue.
Okay, well, I think I'm speaking more to just, I guess, the safety, that crosswalk. I mean, it's an amazing idea. I think it's going to be great, but I do think that maybe more signage directed to these semi trucks that are speeding down the street. And I mean, half the time they don't even stop at the stop sign by coffee company. So
Yeah.
stopping or slowing at this crosswalk just kind of worries me, and I feel like there could be something thought of specifically for that.
I completely agree with Jennifer's position on this, John. I'm really, I look at this and I am very concerned. I mean, I am already concerned about the width of the bridge. Can we extend the curb on the crosswalk, create an elevated barricade, an island? I think you understand the engineering concepts, so that like the first 3 feet into the street, you have a protected concrete barricade and curb around the pedestrians. I think that would do 2 things on each end. It would signal to drivers that you need to slow down, and if they don't slow down, it would afford protection to pedestrians. I worry about this wide open crosswalk. I think it's
can the
pretty
whole
designed.
crosswalk, can the whole crosswalk be a hump of some sort? I don't know if that's totally outlandish and can't be done, but can the whole crosswalk be elevated slightly?
It is elevated, actually.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
You're not.
Yeah.
We're not seeing the whole picture. I don't think.
I'm sorry.
I think that we can certainly take a look at the bringing the bulb out slightly. Obviously, it's a narrow pathway with that, but I'm sure our designers can take a look at that and look at that, and we still have to ramp it, but you could potentially bring out where that white striped area. You could bring out the curb line and a chicane, or sort of what looks like a chicane kind of rounded area there. Anthony, do you have a comment or concern on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to look at a bulb out of the curb, and I think you're right. It would help as a traffic calming measure. One thing that is maybe not totally apparent is the proposed concrete barriers are in exactly the same location as the existing. So as you're driving over the actual bridge portion, it's a narrow lane. But as soon as you get past the barrier, the roadway actually widens out by about 18 to 20 inches on each side.
Mhm.
So you can see at the moment there's that steel railing is in line with the concrete barrier. So we've actually pushed the sidewalk out, a couple of feet. So that's going to help from a pedestrian safety standpoint. The pedestrians are pushed back away from the traffic lane. There is still a white line, so that's going to help with the traffic calming and keeping the traffic away from, offset from that curb line.
I feel sidewalk. I just don't feel. I feel a little worried about that crosswalk, and again, specifically for the huge amount of delivery trucks that we have coming through that area. So I think that's. I mean, I think it's great.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that there was a hump there already, but I just would want to put that in everyone's brain to specifically not so much think about like cars and SUVs and things like that, pickup trucks, but the big semis that are coming with the equipment on the back end of them as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jennifer. I think for the next meeting, besides bringing you a detour plan, we'll bring you a focus plan on this side, on this crosswalk, and how we plan to improve it to make it safer. So Anthony and I will go back to the drawing board and come up with a new plan, and we'll bring it to you next time.
Yeah, share with us the safety aspect, the calming of the traffic, everything what Jennifer said. I would put that into the next agenda, because there's a risk there between bicycle, pedestrian, heavy traffic, and this is the only place where everything converge here. So it'd be good to see you next time, Ray. And
so what we'll do is we'll add the sharrows. We'll work on this crosswalk. We go to our toolbox for the traffic safety on the pedestrian crossings and see whatever we can do to make this safer. We will add that in and bring you a large size of this focused area for you, both as a simulation and as a plan to look at.
Correct.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, Rick's got his hand raised. Did you want to go ahead, Rick? And
No, I think you guys have addressed the issue. I mean, I think if I think about this from a planning commission perspective, the same concerns that have been raised by the committee. How do we make it safe? How do we protect pedestrians? Do we even need this 18 inches of extended curb for cars? Why don't we make it extended curb for pedestrians? Like, just give us some options. I mean, like, there may be good design reasons why you want to leave it the way it is, and that's fine. My primary concern is, and I know my fellow commissioners are going to be concerned about pedestrian safety. So bulbs, breakouts, islands, whatever it is you guys want to do, it would be really good to see something that addresses that and maybe give this committee options to think through the different trade-offs that are there.
Okay.
We will definitely get you something, and we'll get an improvement over that for that. You know, the key to crosswalks and behavior, for the most part, most of us are law abiding and concerned about the safety of pedestrians, is getting them out a few feet from the curb line to some extent and show that they're proposing to go out into the lane there, into the walkway. So that's important. That those ideas are great with that. I would just say this, we've obviously looked at the issue of whether this should be here or not. We landed on the fact that we thought it should be here. I think Dave Crescent had raised this, the desire to see this. I think we all see the need for it, because if we don't do this, we will have people crossing without a crosswalk, and they will be more danger. Certainly more danger as they sit today crossing there with no controlled and nothing visual and everything with that. So I think part of this also is we need to do the best we can do, but we also have to remember, if we don't do this or something similar to this and create this this walkway, then we will have a far more dangerous option there, which is people obviously crossing without any safety and security.
Can I give one more piece of quick feedback regarding this crosswalk and the trucks that I was talking about? Kathleen, what did you call them again? The bumps in the road? What were those?
Bots dots.
Bots dots. So I get, deliveries of pallets of soil and stone and things like that of my drivers coming across this road. So I feel like I have a lot of info on it. Coming into town, they're barreling down Main Street. Coming out, once they've delivered the load, it's a different story. They're going slower. So possibly doing bots dots before, almost where this white car is on the rendering, before the crosswalk, that could be interesting. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I just wanted to give you that little bit of data, which is that coming into town, they're driving much, much, much faster because they want to get the delivery done. Going out is a little bit of a different story. It's slower because they're already in this kind of enclosed area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah.
It's a great idea to put the bot stops. John, you've done that on the street now that leads to the ocean, the one where you just put the stop light.
Poplar Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got them there and you did it. So that makes a lot of sense.
There may be some pushback that it doesn't adhere to the historic value of the bridge because of the way it looks.
Sure.
So we have some existing bots, so I think we're probably safe there. That's the least of, I think, all of our concerns about the historic piece to this. That's easy. That's the easy piece to this. But I guess my being the pessimist on this is that I think what we see is a lot of those trucks going down the middle of the street. So the bots dots won't be a factor because they'll just straddle them. But but that's
Sure.
that's a bit of my pessimistic nature coming out. Sorry.
Yeah, and the sound is something, sometimes it can be loud if a
noisy
semi is going over it.
Yep. So I think these were great comments. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking to you. We get a little, if you're looking at this and and our guys are focused on a lot of the structural and dealing with that, and we're trying to do kind of this whole deal. You get sometimes a little myopic in the look, and thank you for being the you know, the eyes and ears to recognize these things. So it's really important.
Those are good comments. The last simulation, I guess we did talk about this much, was looking east from the east side of the, looking east from the west side of the structure, and just showing that the arch still looks the same, just cleaned up concrete. The sidewalks are not attached to the bridge, even though it's adjacent to the bridge, next to the bridge. So there's no load on the bridge. If you can see, the old sidewalks were attached using this triangular trusses, and those will be coming out. Instead, we would have this clean concrete underneath. The railing would be pretty much the same look almost, except it would be steel and painted white. It would be 42 inches. What we did, we made a little change to FHWA and extended the top of the railing supports to match the top of the existing railings. So it kind of stands up a few inches from the top railing to match the existing historic look of the bridge. So that's pretty much where we stand in terms of trying to appease the architectural historians and make sure the integrity, the historic integrity of the bridge stays the same. So what we wanted to ask you tonight was, if you are happy with us keeping the with what we have designed in line with the historic integrity of the bridge, we'll move forward with a motion from you guys to go ahead and take this to Caltrans and get their buy-off in order to do the environmental clearance. Of course, all the comments you had in regards to the detours, the detour plan, and the crosswalk, we'll bring back to you at the next meeting to discuss, and also give you a status where we are. But at this point, we want to make sure that you're okay with the general look of the bridge and creating this design that complies with the architectural concept, the historic concept of the bridge, and we move forward with this. So at the next slide.
Yeah, if I could again add to that, and for really responding to sort of Commissioner or Committee Member Hernandez, is that we've got to get, we would love to be at a point where we would file the CDP and to be able to deal with the environmental fully on this. But Caltrans environmental, particularly the historic folks, you know, have required us to go to this next level of work and review before we can get to that point. So it's a little, it's as I think Anthony explained pretty well there. We're being forced into sort of having to answer a question about what the design looks like before we would, you know, would like to have a more, you know, vetted process with the environmental, but we can't move forward on environmental until at least we get a general sense from Caltrans historic folks that they're going to accept this design in concept, at least.
That makes
Understood. Yeah, understood. And since you directed the comment to me, John, I'll just say, I have no issues with this design. And my sense is, given the technical nature of what we're doing here and the constraints that are being painted by other agencies, I'm confident that my fellow committee members on the commission will agree. So I'm not too worried about this. I just understand what you're going through. It's just, people are going to want to understand the process when it comes back to the planning commission. So if you guys can bring that process in an abbreviated form, that would be helpful.
I have a question, if I can, on that last rendering or visual simulation. There's a whole bunch of rocks that were added on the what it's going to look like portion. And I was wondering if that's structural or just to make the picture look better.
Definitely is. Those are called riprap, and that's to protect the abutments from washing out during the big storms.
Okay.
The
Go ahead.
Anthony, go
What
ahead.
happened to the wing walls?
The wing wall's still there.
Um,
The wing wall would be,
the-
go ahead, Anthony.
So the wing
Yeah,
walls
yeah.
gonna
So
be
the wing walls,
repaired?
the wing walls, the plan is that we'll strengthen them from behind. We have to do some excavations for the foundation work. And while we're doing that, we'll strengthen the wing walls from behind and essentially just clean up the front face, the same as we'll be doing with the arch. But there's no real repair. And that's sort of the considered view from the historians and the historic architects, is
Okay,
that would be
great.
the
Thank
best
you.
way to leave them. In terms of the rocks, so we've done this hydraulic analysis, which is like a standard procedure with bridge design. And what we find is in severe storms, there's enough water coming through that the banks will get washed away. And Caltrans inspect this bridge every 2 years. And if we look back at, say, I think it was 1954, there's pictures of this bridge, and the creek is several feet lower. And at that time, exactly this type of work was done, where the foundations, the creek was getting low enough that the foundation is getting close to the foundations. And so I assume the city at that time actually came in and put in a layer of this rock. And that rock is now, I think what's happened is it's settled down a little and some of it's moved. But as part of our project, what we do is essentially restore that rock. So we'll dig out, I think it's 4 feet of existing creek bed material and replace it with these large rocks. And the idea is the rocks are, as individual pieces, they're too heavy to be washed away under this estimated water velocity that comes from the analysis.
Okay.
If I could also for just to add to this, and not regarding this bridge, but Doug and I have met with Caltrans consultant contractors, and they are actually doing scour assessments for the Highway 1 bridge, as well as up at the point at the Pilarcitos Bridge up near where the 4-lane, where the climb lanes start. So they're actually doing those assessments, and I anticipate that they'll be doing much of these similar kinds of work eventually once they pass through their environmental processes to deal with the concerns, because their inspections have raised concerns, just as the Caltrans folks on this bridge have, about the scour and the potential washing out of the pillars in the bridge. So we'll be seeing some of those as well coming.
Okay, Rick's got his hand raised.
Oh, sorry.
Hello.
One other thing.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for recognizing me. John, I'll remind you that the city recently had a presentation on sort of the natural, how to manage creek beds and water courses through more natural means other than riprap. And I know that there may be an engineering standard that Caltrans prefers, but there may be more effective mechanisms based on the presentation we had about 6 to 9 months ago that not only address the concerns around the bridge, but more effectively manage flooding downstream and, in the immediate area. So I don't, you guys are going to come up with something on the riprap. It frankly, from my opinion, it's out of bounds for what we're looking at from a design perspective from the bridge, but the city has expressed a completely different standard from dropping gigantic boulders under the bridge. I think there's another design that we can look at, based on best practices that are out there now. And, it might require more vegetation, more trees and things like that. But it's out of bounds from my perspective.
Certainly we will be looking at options, and this again is the most straightforward approach to it. But this project will be subject to review by National Marine Fisheries, the Water Board, Army Corps, every alphabet soup there is out there, of agencies. So we'll see what this looks like at the end and design. So we'll
Well, I mean, I just think planting, shallow trees and plants has the same effect as riprap, especially if we extend it further on. It may have a more visually appealing effect. But again, you guys, the city's presented these ideas to us.
Yeah.
It would be good to reincorporate that into the actual design, because some of those alphabet soup people are going to be real sticklers around best practices.
Sure.
So I just that's my feedback, because
I agree.
visually
But
other people have reacted to the riprap, and I didn't say anything, but since other people on the committee have reacted to the riprap, I'm going to say we've got a standard that we can use here.
And I'm going to say, and I'll leave it at this and go from there, which is that sometimes this is just what we're left with, because we have an existing structure that maybe shouldn't have been built at that location. And then we're trying to retrofit around, but we, as you know, we're looking for the greenest approach to anything and everything that we're doing, particularly when we're dealing with the Pillarcitos Creek, and so are every one of the alphabet soup agencies. So we will see what the end result is and what the recommendations come out from the biologists, from everyone out of there, and as you know, we will seek and search for the greenest option that we can do.
Yeah, and I would like to point out, so we have been discussing with our project biologists, but we haven't approached the agencies yet, so CDFW and the Army. We have deliberately shown, this is sort of envisaged as something like 2 years after construction. What we're often doing now is as these rocks are being placed, there are cardboard tubes are inserted between the rocks and willow stakes. And so within about 2 years, the willow stakes will look something like this. And then another few years later, it's going to be a lot more green and a lot less rock is visible. But we deliberately wanted to show there are rocks there because, we don't want to hide the fact that the plan is that we need to put some sort of scour mitigation in. But I think over the sort of 5 to 10 years, a lot of those rocks are going to disappear behind the willows as they grow.
Well, let me just lay out the contingency that I've heard. Right, when we use these types of materials, you end up with issues downstream or upstream, depending on how these types of things are laid out. And so my concern is in the immediate area, the last thing anybody wants is flooding as a result of riprap and things, right? Like, I don't think that's where we're going. And I just think that it's outside of the bounds maybe of this particular project, but city staff could come forward and say, look, let's go a quarter mile upstream. Let's put some different types of trees and plants in the riverbed according to the best standards that we've all heard. Let's put some other things along the creek bed under the bridge so that it's visually more appealing. You've got plants that it's not just green, right? It's not just that it's green, it's that it actually serves a purpose, which is reducing flooding, reducing the flow of the river. It slows things down. Like, those are the things that we want to accomplish with this, because we have several property owners on this Main Street Bridge Committee who the last thing they want to see is their properties get flooded, right? So we just want to make sure that we take care of those things, and that's really it. And I think we have ways to handle that. And again, it's maybe a little bit outside the bounds of what we're doing here from a design perspective, but if we can think about that integrated approach, and John Dowdy and Jill Eckes both know, they have the background on this, so they can think about the more integrated approach.
Okay, yep, no, that totally makes sense to do some more channel restoration, not just at this one location, but further up and downstream. The intention here, by the way, is that we would put in the scour protection below the existing level of the creek, so we wouldn't be changing any flooding potential or whatever. And those are things that have to be looked at as part of the hydraulic analysis.
Ray, did you ask a little earlier for us to approve a tentative design for you to take to Caltrans?
Yes, Brian, thank you for bringing that up. I just wanted to just get a motion from you that based on the visual simulations and the overall concept of the design, that this would be the direction we would go in order to maintain the historic integrity of the bridge. And we could present this to Caltrans and FHWA for their buyout.
So moved. So moved.
Second.
Okay, let's.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Good.
Okay,
Yeah.
motion carries. Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you, Ray.
So I just wanted to look at the project schedule real quick. We have done the design for the barriers. We have started the environmental clearance, the design of the deck, the foundation, the overall layout of the bridge. And we're going to go to Caltrans and FHWA and the architectural historians to get their buy-off. In parallel, start the CEQA and NEPA process to get their clearance and permitting from all the different agencies. We are expecting all this to go through all the way through the end of 2022 to get the final approvals, and hopefully we can, once we get the approvals, we get close to it, we need to petition to allocate funding for construction. So depending on when actually they're going to allocate our funding, we are hoping that we could start construction, go out to bid shortly after the approvals coming from Caltrans and FHWA, and then we can go into construction. Now, construction, we're expecting for stage construction, we will have several different phases for construction. As Anthony explained, we're going to go from move the southbound traffic and one sidewalk, move it to the east and to the west in order to build the deck and the sidewalks and strengthen the bridge and the foundation and the wing walls, etc. So we will be looking at different stages. We'll bring those phases and stages of construction to you also. And at the next meeting, we will bring in the new design for the crosswalk. Also, we would make some changes to the layout. We're going to add sharrows for the bicycles, add the bots for the bob outs. We would rearrange the sidewalk to make it safer and bring it back to you along with the detour plan, the traffic control plan as to what we're going to do during the stage construction and how we're going to direct traffic back to the Highway 1 and 92.
Speaking of budgets, Ray, I
Yeah.
do have a question, and of course we have control to some extent of our Half Moon Bay budget. Is there any jeopardy with all that's happened with our pandemic that either the federal, state, or county budgets would be impacted to us?
So the budget for this project comes from the Highway Bridge Program, and we have already allocated, we have the E76 as it's called from Caltrans allocating $1.2 million for the design. They call this the design or preliminary design phase and environmental clearance. And that budget is in place and it's in the books. I don't see any problems, anyone touching that budget since it's already been allocated and we already awarded the contracts. So I think we're okay in that. The next phase, which would be about $6.5 million that we need from them for construction, plus the city contribution, that would be something that we need to work on as soon as we get to a stage that we could see in the horizon that all the approvals are coming through, and we will look at we will have to work with Caltrans local assistance, MTC, and see if the federal budget is going to still come through. And we're hoping that it would. There's no reason that it should not. The infrastructure is the first priority. And even with the pandemic, that has been a priority. And I don't expect that to go away. The only other issue would be the city contribution. The city contributes about 11% of the total budget. And for the construction, that's approximately $800 some thousand that the city needs to contribute. And that would be the only other contribution needed besides the federal contribution, about roughly almost $7 million.
John has control of that, I think, don't you, John?
Absolutely. The basic question to that, we aren't concerned. This has the funding. It's in a funding source that is in a large package. Also, the council has continued to maintain the matching funds for this. So, we don't see this project being at risk.
Good.
At this point, anything can happen, and we'll see. But at this point, we feel comfortable and confident.
Good. Well, and we only know what we know, and we can't control what we don't. So.
Thank you for asking that, though. I was just about to.
Well, I think we've even made it to our 7:30 time. Not that we're time restrained, but unless there's further business, I'd entertain a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All right. And thank you very much, Sherry and John and staff, and Ray, Anthony, great to hear from you. And Rick, I'm glad you could weigh in. So good meeting.
Yeah, we also have Mawash Harms from Big Cardosa. I don't know, Mawash, if you have.
I'm Mawash.
Nice to meet you.
I think she might have signed out. There she is.
So
No, she commented. She commented, and like any good city engineer or any good engineer, she just keeps quiet unless she needs to contribute. So appreciate that and love the work that your firm's doing on this project and other projects in the city. Thank you. I also second the motion, and I think we're all voting to say we adjourn. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Good night. Thank you.